a video game inspired by Fleischer and Silly Symphony cartoons of the 30s. It was only a matter of time before it became an actual cartoon, and it didn't take me 2 hours to get through the first episode. I am not good at this game. Cuphead and Mughead have taken their adventures to Netflix, and they've brought all their nods and tributes to classic cartoons with them. 29 miles or so off the coast of Inkwell Isle, where everything is anthropomorphic, there are familiar faces and new ones, and a giant love note to classic 2D hand-drawn cartoons. Let's dive in. Now, it's no secret that Cuphead draws on the 1930s cartoons of Fleischer Studios and Walt Disney cartoons. Now, when it comes to recreating that feel, game creators Chad and Jared Moldenhauer have been joined by executive producer Dave Wasson to carry the look from the game to the cartoon. Now, you might think it'd be easier to make a cartoon look like old cartoons than it was to make a video game look like old cartoons. But it came with its own challenges and its own opportunities. Like recreating the watercolor backgrounds that gave those cartoons their distinct look. For the game, they had to create 25. For the series, they had to create thousands. Art director Andrea Fernandez was given the unenviable task of creating the style guide for those backgrounds as well as the general look. That involved 6 months of studying the source material. Now, Popeye, one of the big influences for Cuphead, turned out to be a goldmine for Fernandez. Color palettes from the classic cartoon were used throughout the series for different locations that made up Inkwell Isle. Ah, that skip intro button. You've got a lot of binging to do and not a lot of time to sit and watch a theme song. Unless it's an awkward, choreographed dance by the cast to Wigwam's Do You Want to Taste It? That song might be stuck in all our heads until Peacemaker Season 2. Executive producer Wasson noted that his kids loved the opening to shows and wanted to try and make an opening that wouldn't be skipped. First step is a catchy song. The second is an opening that is laden with Easter eggs, some more obvious than others. The opening shot of the isle 29 miles or so off the coast includes a map that traces your pathway of frustration through the first 3 isles that make up the original game, pushed into one island. Justo All Day does a quick breakdown pinpointing Elder Kettle's house, the observatory, Isle 2's Carn-Evil, and Isle 3's city. There's even Quadratus. Shut up, Quadratus. I don't need to know how many times I died. It's a lot. I'm really bad at this game. Now, the idea that cartoons are just for kids has aged out, with multiple generations now refusing to let go of their cartoon childhood. But even if you're an adult who still digs their animation, it's sometimes easy to forget how much of animation is just straight-up nightmare fuel shown to a jazzy tune. For instance, Funhouse Frazzle. You know you're in trouble when the island itself has already been a practical funhouse of surly vegetables and whatever Hildeberg is. Making your way from Isle 2 to Isle 3, you get living cars, disturbing duck toys, and a tuba that shoots Christopher Nolan soundtracks at you. Covering a lot of the features all bent on making you shout expletives at adorable cartoons are extra creepy eyes, like the ones in the middle of 2 mouths on the green and white checkered wall. Something that sounds like you describe to your therapist as a reason that you don't sleep anymore. The opening sequence has Cuphead and Mugman running down a hallway full of those eyes. Now, there are 2 things in classic animation that are fairly reliable. First, cute things cannot be trusted. Now, this might be true in general. Sure, your cat is cute. That's how she gets you to feed her. You hear me, Fluffenstein? I'm on to you, you adorable little ball of floof. Here, have a treat. Ah, foiled again. The other is that you'll grow up with a reasonable approximation of impressions of former stars you've never actually seen in a movie. Growing up on all these cartoons made in the 30s and 40s made kids mild experts on golden age celebrities. I thought Frankie was just a thin rooster that made women swoon for some reason for years. One impression kids growing up on these cartoons have, but never know why, is James Cagney, a favorite target of impersonation in cartoons at the time. Though Cagney Carnation gets his name more for the alliteration than his resemblance to the Public Enemy or the angel with the dirty face. The little dancing flowers are swaying to the tune in the opening credits of the show as Cupman blissfully strolls by. Little does he know. The show's creators went all in on creating that catchy opening you won't want to skip, which meant getting some help. The theme song was written by Wasson and co-executive producer Cosmos Sergeson and then warmed over by series composer Ego Plum, a composer from SpongeBob SquarePants who wrote the theme to The Patrick Star Show. Man, these people have fantastic names. The opening shot is a bit of stop motion, as hands roll open a map of Inkwell Isle. For this stop motion, they turn to the people at Screen Novelties, who provide stop motion services for SpongeBob SquarePants and Robot Chicken. Now, when you're making a tribute, there isn't going to be one thing that inspired a character or scene. As a pastiche of Fleischer and Silly Symphony cartoons, there is a lot to draw on for their moving drawings. I may have tried too hard with that one. Anyway, one of the big influences on Cuphead is Bimbo the dog, best known as Betty Boop's boyfriend, and the less you think about how that works, the better. Bimbo and Cuphead share the same big eyes and penchant for getting into trouble, though they swap out Bimbo's red shirt for Cuphead's red shorts. Bimbo also happens to be a favorite character of the Moldenhauer brothers, creators of the game. The red shorts also harken to another influence that's perhaps a little better known, one Mickey Mouse. This also carries over to his brother Mugman, who resembles a character created by Walt Disney for Universal, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald remained a Universal property, so Walt went from rabbit to mouse and then conquered the world. In the opening of the game, where Cuphead is tossing those fateful dice that set the game in motion, Mughead looked worried, so they built the two characters around that. Cuphead was impulsive, stating his life strategy in the first episode. When he feels unsure, he doubles down. A nod to his gambling nature that got him in trouble there, with Mugman being more cautious and afraid. The Moldenhauers also say that this reflects their own sibling relationship, with Chad being more of a Cuphead and Jared being more of a Mugman. Now, the devil obviously plays a big part in both the series and the video game, as well as his number one guy, the Dice King. In the series, both the Devil and King Dice get their own introductory songs, with a telltale bit of call and response, reminiscent of Jump Blues legend Cab Calloway and songs like Heidi Ho Man and Minnie the Moocher. Now, in a lot of ways, you can trace every dynamic frontman in popular music back to Cab Calloway and other Jump Blues band leaders like Louis Jordan. The upbeat, horn-heavy music formed the basis for rhythm and blues and rock and roll. Now, Cab Calloway was famous not only for his call and response, but his non-stop energy stage presence that became a favorite for animators who would adopt Calloway's zoot suit and wild moves. The Dice King even sports Cab Calloway's stylish mustache. Both the Devil's and King Dice's autobiographical songs echo Cab Calloway songs that generally described a character, also generally hiding their nefarious, or shall we say, sexier inclinations in slang terms. Now, Cab Calloway and his Jump Blues compatriots aren't the only musicians of the age to get a lot of shout-outs in the cartoons of the early era. While Calloway had his popularity, the pop stars of the time were crooners, and none of them were more popular than a skinny kid with a golden voice and sparkling blue eyes, Frank Sinatra. Sinatra's later life loomed large over his legacy as a legend who carried a lot of weight and a fixture of Las Vegas. But once upon a time, he was just a remarkable young singer with a velvet voice that predated Beatlemania and Screaming Elvis fans in wooing the ladies. Along with Bing Crosby, anytime a singer was depicted for parody, Frank and his crowd were a good bet. And keeping the tradition alive, if broadly, is the Root Pack, a play on the term Rat Pack, the name given to Sinatra and his crooning friends. In the episode Root Pact, the bosses from the game become a nuisance for the boys when they try to convince them that they'll look after the garden and instead have an exclusive party complete with a stage for performing. Now, Cab Calloway isn't the only influence on the character of the Devil, or even the most obvious. That distinction comes in the form of the Silly Symphony's short Hell's Bells. Like most Silly Symphony's cartoons, there isn't really much of a plot so much as a collection of sequences set to music. In this case, a variation on Funeral March of the Marionettes, one of those pieces that you don't know you know, but chances are you know it. Hell's Bells puts its setting in, you guessed it, a giant bell. That's wrong. Hell. Its setting is in hell. The design for the devil in both the game and the TV show for Cuphead comes in that short, as well as much of the design for hell itself. It's one of the templates for the design of Cuphead in general. Even the devil's transformations in the game come from segments in Hell's Bells, including the spider swinging over the fire pit and the dragony snake that he turns into. In general, themes of the devil, bargaining, and descents into hell are a recurring theme in cartoons of that era. By 1938, the House of Mouse was having trouble with the mouse part. Mickey Mouse had started to wane in popularity, so Disney had created a silly symphony for him called The Sorcerer's Apprentice. The budget for Sorcerer's Apprentice had ballooned, so Disney made a move that would make Cuphead proud. He doubled down. He expanded it into a feature film with a collaboration with Leopold Stokowski and invented a new recording system called Fantasound, making the movie the first movie presented in stereo and laid the groundwork for surround sound. And it would have taken the world by storm if it wasn't 1940, a time when World War II started taking the world by storm, making European distribution, well, they were a little busy. Since then, however, Fantasia has become a classic, as Disney movies tend to do. And the most recognizable segment from it is the one that started it all. The Sorcerer's Apprentice, when Mickey Mouse tries to use some of his sorcerer's magic to get some chores done. When Cuphead and Mugman pull a Tom Sawyer and trick the devil into painting the fence for him, the devil employs his own magic, complete with dancing brushes to take the place of dancing brooms. There's even a little musical nod to the classic segment. Now there's another, if less specific, nod to the genre in the show's second episode. It's so classic, in fact, that it's hard to trace it to a specific cartoon. In the episode Baby Bottle, the boys are left on their own with two instructions. Don't fight, and don't break Elder Kettle's prize radio. To complicate matters, the boys discover a baby who's been left on their doorstep in their care. Hijinks ensue. This is a classic template for cartoons from the era to this day. The formula is all there. A character or characters least likely are in charge of a baby or delicate thing, and a series of hijinks either endanger the baby or a precious thing like Elder Kettle's prize radio. The trope showed up in another tribute to cartoons of the time, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? The premise of the cartoons that Roger acted in were ones where Roger was left in charge of a danger-prone baby, as well as the premise in the Animaniacs characters Mittens and Mindy. Now, not all nods are subtle or little known. Even if you're not into old Silly Symphony and Fleischer cartoons, you've likely come across the Silly Symphony The Skeleton Dance. If nothing else, it seems to be playing on the TV of people in horror movies right before the spooky stuff starts to happen. If, for some reason, the Skeleton Dance starts playing on your TV for no particular reason without you seeking it out, move out of your house, burn it to the ground, and send exorcists. Some spooky nonsense is about to happen. In the episode Ghosts Aren't Real, Cuphead and Mugman find themselves crossing a graveyard at dusk and trying to convince themselves or each other that they aren't afraid when they clearly are. In addition to the tribute dance of skeletons, there are nods to Disney's Haunted Mansion and the Mausoleum stage from the game, which is extra frustrating if you say, forgot how to parry and don't know what the stage wants from you. I am really bad at this game. Another broad nod to the genre is the theme of anthropomorphizing basically everything. That means turning things not people into things very much like people. Like a cup, mug, and a kettle who walk around and talk and have gardens and adventures. It's the evolution of that theme that gave us movies like Cars and Planes. They were riffs on cartoons like that Tex Avery short for MGM, Little Johnny Jet, where a pair of parent propeller planes have a little child jet. Like many of these things, the less you think about it, the better. In the intro, Cuphead ends up conducting a band of anthropomorphic instruments like the tuba that attacks with low notes. This is a nod to the Silly Symphony Music Land, essentially a Romeo and Juliet story of a violin from Symphony Land falling in love with a saxophone from Jazzland, presumably to go on and join the Dave Matthews Band. Kind of fitting, the saxophone was patented by Adolph Sax in 1846 and largely disliked by the composers of the time. For the first decades of its existence, it was a novelty instrument popular mostly in France, until Sidney Bechet brought one back to New Orleans, starting the saxophone's long association with jazz. Can you spot the band, geek? Now, not all the bosses make it into the first season of the Cuphead Show. Gotta save something for a second season, after all. Well, it is Netflix, so I guess you never know. But there are some cameos if you look. Actually, probably a lot of them. But here's one of them. When it comes time to face down King Dice, there's a sub-boss, Chips Bedigan, which is an anthropomorphic, we paid a lot for that word, we're gonna get our mileage out of it, stack of chips. In the first episode, where the devil gets his claim on Cuphead's soul, in the gathered crowd isn't necessarily Chips Bedigan, but a stack of coins in the same vein. Now this one is another grab by YouTuber Justo All Day from the trailer. Bosses Ribby and Croaks make their appearance in the episode called What Else? Ribby and Croaks. This time, they're riverboat nightclub owner brothers who had given up their fighting ways for their nightclub act. Naturally, being frogs, flies play a key part in their boss battle. In a nod to that, the nightclub band is made up of flies. Now, the one thing that they haven't managed to translate from the game is the frustration that turns you into a gibbering idiot begging the little cup man to stop running into the woodpecker every time you try and jump a gap. Did I mention that I am abysmal at this game? Oh, but not as bad as Dean Takahashi. What, you don't remember that legendary clip of him not being able to get through the tutorial level? You should really do yourself a favor and check that video out.
Ah, that video was a cup of fun, you see? What were your favorite moments from Cuphead Season 1? What are you in particular looking forward to in Season 2 of the Cuphead Show? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, everybody, thanks for watching.